let's start from the beginning. Where did you come from? Where was
South Philadelphia,
South
Pennsylvania.
Philly?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's how I started. I was a numbers runner. I was a bookie. I was everything. I was a big gambler.
Is that right? Back in the early days?
I started gambling when I was 5 years old.
No kidding. What was your first bet? Do you remember your first bet?
We used to play unders. It was good. That, and they have to match the pennies.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of gambling, and it got me in a lot of trouble. But it got me to be an actor.
How so?
That's how this is a true story. In 1945, after the Army, I gambled a lot. I owed a loan shark about $300. And his nephew was my best friend. Uh-huh. I used to call this guy Uncle Tommy. Yeah. But he was going to turn because I wasn't able to pay him, he was going to turn the debt over to a couple of guys. Yeah. They were going to kill you, but they hurt you. So I went and said, Uncle Tommy, I always pay you. Yeah. He said, Jake, I got $100,000 on the street. That's 1945. If you don't pay me and I don't do nothing, I kiss that money goodbye. Yeah. He said, if you give me some money before they get to you. So I always thought about acting, but I thought you had to be born a special way, a special person, to be an actor. So, but I always thought about it. I had the GI Bill, so I went to Carnegie. Right. And that was an experience. So I had to go and audition with 27 17-year-old virgins and me. And that's the truth. One was Seda Thompson was one, and Nancy Marchand was another peer. A lot of people who became very successful. Mm-hmm. But I never spoke before 3 people, and I talked like I came from the Sopranos. Uh-huh. They all had class, and they had sophistication. They got up and they performed, and they were wonderful. Right. Either they did scenes or they did monologues, and they were prepared. I wasn't prepared. So they gave me Our Town to read. Our Town. The guy from Maine. So I got up, and there were these 27 virgins, and I was the only guy, and in the middle of it, I just hyperventilated. I couldn't go on. I went and sat down. Now I had to go around and get evaluated by teachers. Right. There were 2 guys who were leaving. They said, well, our voice doesn't mean anything, but you're not suited to be an actor, Mr. Klugman. You're most suited to be a truck driver. This is the truth. This is the truth. But we had nothing to say, so okay. So then I went to Mary Morris, who was the head of and she said, what they said, you're not really suited to be an actor, Mr. Klugman, but you see our problem. We only have one, we don't have men to do scenes with. But in January, they're all coming back, and we'll probably let you go. So I said, well, by January, I'm going to get a job at night. I'll send some money to the Uncle Tommy, and by then everything will be good. And I knew I couldn't be an actor, I'll be out. Yeah. So that's what happened. Then I had to do my first scene, so they accepted me on those conditions. Uh-huh. And I got a job as a busboy. And I had to do a scene from one Sunday afternoon with this girl, and we rehearsed for 3 weeks. And I rehearsed and rehearsed. I just loved doing it, but I was scared to death. There came the day that I had to do it in front of these 27 virgins.
That sounds like
and Mary Morris. And there were 3 chairs, there were a park bench, and there were two flats, there were the trees, and this girl waiting for me. And I just got out of jail. I have to preface this that I had a rich uncle in Philadelphia. And when I would go to his house and eat, if he had chicken, I would say I wasn't hungry because I didn't know how to eat the chicken. I was embarrassed to pick it up. I just couldn't. I was uncomfortable. So now I'm waiting to go on, and my heart is pounding. I mean, I think it's gonna burst through my skin. And finally time, and I walk on stage, and suddenly those 3 chairs became a park bench, and those 2 flats became trees. And I loved this girl. And I knew I could eat chicken on that stage. I knew I was more comfortable on that stage than I was in life. So I finished the scene. I didn't know where I was. I wish I could get that concentration back. Right. And when it was over, Mary Morris said, they applauded. I didn't know where I was. And Mary Morris said, you see, I almost made a terrible mistake. I expected talent to come in a nice box tied with a blue ribbon. But sometimes it comes with a lot of dirt on it. And she said, well, we just have to take you. She said, I was wrong. You do belong here, Mr. Klugman. Well, I went home and cried. And that's how I became an actor.
That's so great. That's so great. If that first scene hadn't gone that well, what do you think might have happened?
I'd have been a numbers runner. I always said, if I hadn't done that, I'd be here asking for parole.
So you continued on there. You got your degree from Carnegie Mellon?
No. Funny, Mary Marsh was a director. Well, the first thing she directed me, and she was just terrible, because she'd say, on this line, pick up your arm. On this line, drop your leg.
Oh, Lord.
So like a puppet. So that was my freshman year.
Yeah.
So at the end of my sophomore year, she said, I want you to do Three Sisters. Now, I'm a coward in every other area, but when it comes to acting, which has been my best friend and never let me down, I've always been courageous. I've always. So I said, no, Mary, I can't work with you. Well, for me to say that to a teacher, she said, why? She had been a big star on Broadway, too. I said, well, you know, you make me feel like a puppet. She said, I don't want to do that. She said, well, as long as you're in this school, you'll do what I say. I said, then I quit. It just came out. She said, what? I said, yeah, I quit. What am I doing here? I shouldn't spend more than 2 years in a professional school. Let me go out into the world. So I went into the dean, who had directed me in a play, and I said, I'm leaving. I'm quitting. You can't. He said, you can't. He said, we're giving you scholarships, and you're the best thing we had. I said, Bill Ike. I said, Bill Ike? You could have said Arthur Kennedy for that. I think it missed me. It was very nice. And so I left, and I went to New York after 2 years.
Wow. Had you ever lived away from Philly? I mean, other than your stint in the service, or was that kind of the...
Well, I'd always traveled around. You know, a reporter once asked me, because I had come from a large family. There were 6 kids. And they said, do you feel that being the baby of the family helped your career because people paid attention to you and fawned over you? I said, no, babe. Whatever success I've had has come because nobody gave a damn that I lived. When I was 8 years old, I was on my own, always on my own. If I wanted a bike, I sold subscriptions. If I wanted money, I sold pretzels. I made it myself, and I got street smarts that way. And because they had their own problems, you know. There was the Depression days. So, no, I was more or less on my own.
So when you went to New York, what did you have to do to survive, or did you immediately start getting roles?
No, God, I starved for 3 years. I went to New York. There was a place on 113th Street in Broadway where Alex Siegel, who had been a graduate from the school, and a lot of kids lived in this building. There were 14 rooms on the floor, 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen. And that was in there, a lot of floors. So I roomed with a guy named Frank Stevens, big heavy-set guy who loved beer. He'd bring 6 quarts of beer a night. Between the beer and his stockings that he would leave under the bed for. I'm not a neat freak, but man, he was something. But he had a wonderful, wonderful collection of books. He had wonderful books, wonderful, everything from, I can't think of it, from Jack London to Benchley to Huxley to Steinbeck. I mean, it was wonderful. And I had a lot of time to read. And so I finally bought that library from him for $50 a couple of years later. And I stayed there, and I made the rounds. I got jobs as elevator operators. I sold blood. I did whatever I had to do to survive. I would go home, paint houses for a week, make $75, and I would come back. Well, $75 would last a long time. Like the corner beanery, when I sold blood for $5, you could get calf liver and onions for 75 cents. And they told me that you got your blood back with. So I did that. And it was a Chinese restaurant across the street. So I would sleep late, read and sleep late. And I'd go there for lunch, brunch, with breakfast for $1. They would give you tomato juice. Then I would get egg foo young, 3 pancakes with a ton of rice and a lot of tea, and they'd give you Jello at the end for $1 and leave a dime tip. Well, that would last you all day. Well, I was lucky when I could have that. But that was, nothing. You made the rounds. I did off Broadway.
Did you get an agent right off, or did you have to do it on your own?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't get an agent when I was working all the time in live television. In fact, MCA called me and said, we want to represent you because you're working too much. I said, that's the truth. I worked a lot.
Yeah.
You did in those days. Well, you're jumping now, but
Yeah.
in live television when it first started, you got them all yourself. They called you they called me personally all the time. And they would give you conflicts, you see,
right.
because they didn't pay you much money.
Right.
So they give you like 200, I got one job, they were talking about being courageous. 1949, I think I was really broke. I go 50, I remember the time, I don't remember. But it was, you got $125 if you had over 5 lines. I worked when you got $10 before there was a union. I got $10 doing the front page, which they made into a series. If I had words, I got $60. Now I got $125 if you had over 5 lines. And this director read a line. He said, no, say the line this way. David, whatever. And I said, don't read this line to me. You tell me what you want, and I'll do it, because if you were an actor, you couldn't get a job on Howdy Doody. So needless to say, I didn't work for about 25 years later. I've had a lot of experiences like that, but that's the best money I ever lost.
Yeah. Worth every penny. Yeah. Well, how did that work? I mean, how did they get to know your work to call you up directly? I mean, did they have open auditions or something? Or how did?
Well, first I was going to the American Theater Wing.
Right.
And I had a wonderful teacher, Kurt Conway. And Kim Stanley was in the class. We were friends. And Kurt would recommend someone. Kurt was in the Big Story, so he would recommend me. I started radio because I was taking a radio course, and this guy recommended me. And word gets around. But that was after I had done Mr. Roberts, which was my first job. That was my first professional job.
Wow.
And that was because I lived with Charlie Bronson. Charlie and I lived in one of these rooms for 2 years. Paid $7 a week. So one day Charlie comes in with 2 wooden Pepsi Cola boxes.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with those, Charlie? We don't have room. Puts them down, puts his feet on the table, does 125 push-ups with his chest touching the floor.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. This guy was... Then he came in the next day, took my books, and he tied them to the legs of a washing machine. Charlie, what are you doing? For the latissimus, he's doing whatever. Whatever that is. So I would watch him, and I couldn't get him to read the books. So finally, I said, I'll make a trade with you. I'll do the exercise if you'll read. Yeah. Well, he read Jack London, he read Martin Eden, and he just identified with it very strongly. And he was a self-made man, he felt, and he started reading, and we slept on either side of the room in a small bed. And we'd read till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then we would talk about him. And he started to read avidly, and I started to work out. It was good. Because I got to tell you that I always was a little chubby. I was always a little pudgy. So now we had to go, when I got the audition for Mr. Roberts, usually you go to the audition, people are studying the lines, not there. When you go for Josh Logan, everybody's doing exercises, pumping their muscles. Right. Because first thing you do is take off your shirt. And if you didn't look good, you didn't get to read. And nothing to do with acting. Right. So I went back, and so I'm exercising, I'm doing push-ups in the back. And I took off my shirt. Anyway, I got the job. So and I was in pretty good shape. So people said, do that first scene without your shirt. And I was always embarrassed about it. I said, oh, no, yeah, go ahead, you got a good body. Well, a month of eating regularly, they said, put on the shirt. But
what was it like working with Josh Logan?
I didn't like him.
You didn't? Yeah.
He was an ego man. I don't know, I just didn't like him. His ego was too large, and I didn't like him. I loved Fonda.
Yeah.
And Fonda taught me a great deal. I understudied the Doc, which was the second lead. And we were in Kansas City, and the guy who played the Doc was a big drinker. So he used to put urine or stuff in his eyes, and so he bleached them out, and he almost went blind, poor fuck, but he lived. It didn't. But he was out for 6 weeks. So we opened. I was to go on matinee on a Wednesday in Kansas City. And Fonda had maybe done 1,500 consecutive performances. And he comes in and he says, transfer me, Doc. Because the war's coming to an end and he wants to see action before the war ends. So I'm there and I'm used to doing it with the understudy. But he comes in and he says, transfer me, Doc. Now it's Wednesday matinee in Kansas City with an understudy. And I look up and the tears are streaming down his eyes. And he couldn't have been more in it. It was opening night. I just looked and I was just awestruck and I forgot my lines. He just affected me so much I started crying. And he had to save me, which he was gracious, and he did. And after I said, I'm sorry, oh, it was okay. He liked what I had done. And then he started so I said, is there anything you want me to do? So he said, asked me to do some little thing, which I did, which surprised him. I don't know why. He said, oh, you did it, that's wonderful. And he started directing me. So Josh Logan called him and said, look, I hear Bob's going to be out. You want me to send the guy from New York, Bob Keith? And Fonda said, no, this kid's good. The kid's fine. Everybody called me the kid that I really liked. Yeah. And so I did it with him for 6 weeks, which were 6 glorious weeks. For more reasons than one, they thought this guy was coming back every week. So to show their appreciation, I was getting $125 a week. They would give me a bonus. To keep me happy, they thought, well, next week he's coming back. He didn't come back. So I kept getting bonuses. And I bought a gun, but it was a great experience. When it was over, we stopped. Oh, in fact, Josh Logan, I don't like him. I'll tell you why. So we went to, in Hollywood, we finished. Hank said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I got a few things in the fire. I'm going to stay. He said, don't stay here. I said, why? I said, you made your bundle here, yeah. He said, I'm telling you, don't stay here. He said, you got to go back to New York. You got to stay in the theater. He said, if you stay here, don't say hello to me. If you see me walking down the street, I won't know you. I said, well, he said, so anyway, I didn't stay. And I went back, and he got me 12 Angry Men. He got me the job. He never told me, but he did. And he got me Petrified Forest, which I did with Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, Jack Wood. My God. Every time he would introduce me to somebody, he would brag about what I had done. He was like a mentor. I just loved him. He was so honest. He was the best actor I ever worked with. The best, not one of the best. The best. He didn't know how to lie. I just loved him. I just adored him.
That's such a great way of summing it up. He didn't know how to lie.
He didn't. I worked with one other actor that was Bob Preston before he became Music Man. Right. And we played in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We did Detective Story in a 1,000-seater. The largest audience was 62 people. Oh. We played to as few as 12 or 14 people. And he played every performance. Opening night on Broadway. And I said, Bob, he said, hey, it's new to them. I love it. I'm here because I love it. And I know now more than ever what he meant.
Doing it for yourself
as
much as...
Do it for the family, you do it for you.
Yeah.
Not for anybody else.
Right.
You hope you please them, otherwise you're out of business, but you can't eliminate that filter, which is you.
That's great. So what happened next? You came back to New York?
So I came back to New York. So Josh Logan, right? Yeah. He heard I was good in the show. So he said, Billy Hammerstein, who worked for him, called me and said, Josh wants you to take out a company of Roberts with You Play the Doc. I said, well, I already did it with Henry Fonda. What am I going to do with it? Right. No, I'm staying here. He said, well, Josh Logan's going to get mad, angry. Who the hell cares? I said, I don't care if it's angry. It doesn't matter. So he got angry. Yeah. Now, dear friend of mine, Winsor Lewis, who was married to Barbara Bulgari, all these stories go. Yeah. He ran a wonderful summer stock theater that I went to every year for 3 years, played 9 leads every year out of 10 weeks. It was just wonderful production. Everybody got $70 a week. Yeah. No matter how much you made. Barbara Bulgari made $5,000 a week in New York. $70 a week there. And you did good productions. In fact, Arthur Miller directed me and all my sons down there. It was a wonderful place. So he was going to direct a play on Broadway. Oh, God, famous, good play. But since he was new, the Theater Guild said he must have supervision, and that was Joshua Logan. So now I'm in the play, and Josh Logan's there all the time. The first rehearsal, Wayne calls me that night. He said, "What the hell did you do to him? He's so mad, he hates you." I said, "It's all right, I hate him too." I said, "Let me out." He said, no, I want you in the play.
Yeah.
All week he's there, and every night Wayne's calling me. He thinks you're not pretty enough for the play.
Oh, okay.
Which is, he just owned. So the last night, the Friday night, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. And I worked, I got to know that I was working all the time.
Yeah.
I was doing television all the time, live television. And he was there, and Arthur Kennedy, I was doing the scene with Arthur Kennedy. And I kept my script loose. And so I was telling Arthur Kennedy off. Half of it I told him, then I told him off. To Josh, I said, "Fuck you, I quit." And I walked out. That's what I know.
You've never had a problem telling people what you think of them, then?
In acting,
Yeah.
I can't confront in any other area. But don't
But
screw
acting,
around with me in my acting.
Right.
I can't, it's mine.
Well, now you worked with another director who has a difficult reputation, Jerome Robbins, right? In Gypsy?
Yeah,
What was that like?
he was a pussycat for me. He was very embarrassed. All he had to do was just, "Hey, Jerry," and I'd hug him.
Yeah.
He couldn't stand that kind of intimacy. He just was screwed. But what he liked was, he never told me a word. He never said a word to me or Sandra. Mm-hmm. But Ethel Merman, he told her every gesture. He knew who to leave alone and who. Mm-hmm. And so we did the play. But after the show was over, I was doing The Odd Couple, and he came to see it, and he said, "I have a play for you." I read the play. I didn't understand one word. Not thought. I didn't know what it meant. So he said, I said, "Jerry, I don't understand it, but I didn't understand, oh, Dad, poor Dad, they're arguing this, whatever that." Yeah. And I loved it. Uh-huh. So if you want me to do it, I'll do it. But he never got back to me, and Jack Weston did it. Uh-huh. So I ran into Jack. I said, "How did that show go?" He said, "That's the only play Alice White and I ever did where the audience threw things at us."
Yikes. So another good career move on your part.
Then he sent me Mother Courage. But I loved him. First of all, I think he was a genius. The only genius I ever worked with. He was brilliant, and it all came from hard work. He choreographed, even I who couldn't dance at all, he would choreograph my moves. Mm-hmm. He'd work day and night on it, and he was really brilliant. Yeah. And I remember after we opened, about 4 days after we opened, he was in the wings looking at the show. It was so highly accepted. And I knew he was thinking, what did I do? What is the formula? And I said, "Jerry, hard work is the only thing. It's never going to come easily." But he wondered if he could do it easily, but it wasn't. He was a hard worker. Yeah. So he sent me Mother Courage. I said, "I'm not a Brecht fan anyway. I'm tired of peasant women cutting bread this way." So he said, so he wanted me to play the chef. Uh-huh. And he kept on, and I thought, well, play this guy crazy, like throwing chickens over you. Be wild, because it's a war. So I said, "All right, Jerry, if you leave me alone for 2 weeks, don't give me any notes, I'll do it." He said, "Okay, fine. He said, "But you got a song." I said, "Yeah, you can work with Millen's song." That's when supposedly I had a voice. So, but he couldn't resist. 2 days later, he said, "Well, when you say I can't give you one note, does that mean?" I said, "Jerry, please." After the third call, I said, "I quit." No, I wouldn't do it. And I saw it. It was boring. And but he was brilliant. He was a brilliant director. But he knew who to leave alone, and what he did with Gypsy was absolutely marvelous.
What was it like working with Ethel Merman?
Oh, I loved her. But first they said, "Be careful, this woman's a barracuda." Boy, they're gonna kill you. So during rehearsal, I would never say hello unless she said hello first. And I was always, we'd be waiting to make our entrance. She turned to me one day, about a week's rehearsal, she said, "You're a moody son of a bitch." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You never say hello. You wait till I say hello." I said, "Well, you're the star." She said, "Have I been a star with you?" I said, "No." She said, "Then cut the shit." Oh. And from that moment on, we just became, I adored her. Well, it was when I auditioned for that, I mean, just My voice was better, but it was, as Tony says, I never sounded like Richard Burton anyway. So, it's all crazy how I got the audition, because MCA handled me, and they wanted me to do, Eleanor Kilgallen submitted me. They said, who's Jack Klugman? She said, it's a client of mine. No, we want kind of a semi-star. So I was doing Playhouse 90 with Art Carney that week. And so she said to them, she knew that he wasn't right. But Eleanor said, what about Art Carney? They said, hey, that's a good idea. He's doing a Playhouse 90 this Thursday, watch it. It was live. So they watched. They said, no, Art's not right, but who is that guy?
Oh, man.
And she said, Jack Klugman. So now I come, she said, you have to go on audition. I said, are you crazy? I can't see. She said, that's not my problem. She always said that. She said, I get the audition, then I go to church and light the candles. The rest is yours. So they first called me and said, you have to go. Nancy Walker's husband, I forget his name, a wonderful voice teacher. David Craig. I saw him because I love David. So I went over and he was going to teach me. They gave me, isn't it romantic to sing? I couldn't even say it. So I sang about 32 bars. And David said, just a minute. And he called Steve Sondheim and he said, Steve, I'm sorry. I know Jack and I respect his acting. He can't sing. Now, he can sing, isn't it romantic? He just can't. He said, you know any other song? I said, no, Brush Up Your Shakespeare, because I had done that on television. He knows Brush Up Your Shakespeare. He said, it doesn't have anything to do with the show, so I learned this isn't romantic. I paid then, I forget his name, the piano player who was now a big conductor, was then very young. I gave him $5 to play the piano for me. And I went up to audition. And I started with a verse. And I was terrible. I knew I was terrible. I always heard, if you're cocky, I'll do it from the top. You'd be better. But it didn't work. I did it from the top. I was rottener than So now I heard from the doctors at the theater, all right, let's read. I said, boy, I got to do some good reading, make up for that lousy singing. So it wasn't easy. I mean, it's just that finger exercise part. There's nothing to it. So I read scene after scene. So then from the doctor said, there's a scene that Arthur Lawrence just wrote. Why don't you take it off and look at it? And I'd be bold. I'll read it cold, I said. He said, okay. So I read it. Again, an easy scene where I leave her. So I heard one guy, just one applause. I thought, oh, that must be Arthur Lawrence. I got him on my side. So he said, don't you know any songs? I said, no, Brush Up Your Shakespeare. Good, sing it. So I began to sing it. In the middle of it, I forgot the lyrics. And I started laughing. I said, fellas, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. I quit. So as I started to leave, they ran on stage. Jerry and Stephen Sondheim and Milton Rosenstock came on stage. They said, no. Look, Julie Stein's not here. He's coming next week. Meantime, you should learn this song, Small World. This guy will teach it to you. So I went to this guy's house every day. John Kander was just an accompanist. I mean, that's what I mean when you've been around long enough. Who knew John Kander was going to write New York and Chicago? And,
Right.
I mean, he was just a piano player. But the sweetest man. I mean, that patience to teach really taught me the song. Now Julie Stein comes and I sing for Julie. Meanwhile, I read with Ethel a couple times. Now I sing, and he says, come on. There's gotta be a guy that can actually sing a little bit. This guy can't sing at all. He said, well, watch him with Ethel. And it went done. I read with Ethel, and about 2 weeks later, my agent called me and said, come down, they want you to audition. I said, I'm not going to sing anymore. I mean, I'm not going to make a fool of myself. Anymore, I'm not going to do it. You won't have to sing, I promise you. I'll stop them. They just want to see how you look with Ethel. Okay, so I go down, and Ethel and I read about 4 scenes. And Jerry Robbins said, sing Small World with Ethel. I look over to my agent, who goes like this. I said, all right, she sings first. After she belts, I'm going to walk out. Well, Ethel Merman could not sing quietly. She just couldn't. But we just had a thing going. And she sang to me so quiet, her voice cracked. She couldn't sustain the notes, but it was such love, such giving to it that I picked up the second chorus and I sang like pizza. There was no good. I was mesmerized by what she was giving me. And when it was over, I said, get out of here because you're never going to do that. So I went. By the time I got home, Jerry Robbins was calling me saying, you got the part. The way you sang. I said, Jerry, it's not going to happen. No, the way you... Now we go into rehearsal. Yeah. And Jerry's saying, the way you sang it, that's... So they cut 16 bars, cut 32 bars. Julie Muncher took it out on the road once. He said, what the hell is this, a talkathon? But Julie Stein, we're in Philadelphia, trying it out. He comes to me, he says, Stephen, I wrote a solo song for you. You wrote a song for me, you didn't even want me in the show. He said, you've learned how to sell a song. So he wrote a song called Nice She Ain't. We're in a Chinese restaurant, she steals the silverware and then she leaves. And the waitress comes in and said, where did the nice lady go? And then she leaves and I'm alone with 1,800 people and I sing, Nice She Ain't. She's this, she's that, but nice she ain't. And I said, I'll let you know tomorrow, Joe. So I went to the hotel, and I had a nightmare, 1,800 people. And I'm searching for the key. Nice. And I thought, what am I trying to prove here? So I went next day, I said, Julie, I said, take that song and shove it up your butt. He said, do you know what a person would do, an actor would do? For a song written by Julie Stein and Steve Stein. I said, yeah, they want to prove they can sing. I can't sing. I'm never going to sing again. I don't want to do it. So I didn't do it. I think he put it in some other play. But I wouldn't do it. And Ethel, she freezes the play a week before you go in. She freezes it. You can't add a line, a song. I said, come on. I said, suppose they wrote a song. She gave me a list of all the songs that Irving Berlin, George Gershwin, and Coppola had written the last week that she would not...
Did she cut?
She would not have it. She would tell her, but I adored her. I just adored her. So we were there about 3 months. I wanted to get out of everything. I wanted to work. So I was there about 3 months. I said, I got to get out of this. It's a hit. I got a 2-year contract. 2 years, Dave America had me. I said, I got to get out. She said, but it's a hit. I said, I know, but she said, I'm not going to let you out. You're too good a support. I said, yeah, I'm a support. I'm a jockstrap. I can't get out. So she was so worried. The next day, she found out my favorite cake was a chocolate. Cushman made a chocolate layer coconut cake. She went and she bought me a plate with a golden K. And she would go herself to buy the cake so that we would have an intermission. We just adored each other. We had the best feeling. I get to it. Well, we're in Philadelphia. I was playing poker about 11:30 at night after we had opened, about 2 weeks in Philly. And I got a call at about 12:15. What are you doing? I'm playing poker. She said, it's a lot more fun up here. I said, I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. The next day I said, look, you've had affairs with all your leading men, and it never worked out. We love each other. We got a good thing going. She said, fine, okay. So I thought it was all over, see. Then when 2 years were running, we went to a closing night party, and my wife was there. She said, I got to ask you, is he a good lay? My wife lied and said yes. But we had a wonderful, wonderful relationship. When she had the brain tumor, she wouldn't let anyone see her and everything. And I didn't know what shape she was in. I knew she was in bad shape. So I called her son and I said, I got to go see her. I was in California. She said, she's not seeing anybody. I said, tell her I'm coming and I want to see her. So he said, I don't know what she got, but she'll see you. So I went to the hospital. I flew in, I went to the hospital. And took about an hour, but they were fixing her up. And she had no hair. They put a turban on. This woman with this wonderful voice, this dynamic personality. And I walked in and she said, what did this happen? Well, I just started, we hugged each other and cried for 20 minutes. Oh. Then one of the parted, I said, "You never sounded better, Ethel," just kidding. And she laughed. But that's what it is. It happens. That's the hand you dealt, and it happened. Absolutely. It was just, it broke my heart. And then 2 weeks later, she died. But I adored her. She went through a lot. She had a lot of pain. A lot of men were not good to her, and her daughters had trouble with it.
What an amazing training ground for you. I mean, to be able to work with that caliber of talent.
Well, from the beginning. I mean, live television now was...
Well, I was just going to say...
Sidney Lumet was directing, Johnny Frank, and the best director I ever worked with in my life was a floor manager at the time. He became like brothers. Was Robert Mulligan.
Yeah.
Now, Robert was a fly, but he was ambitious. Mm-hmm. He was working as assistant director on a show called Suspense. And every night he would go home, every week he would go home. They had 3 cameras. It was live. Mm-hmm. If one camera went out at any time, Howie would finish the show with 2 cameras. For a year and a half, he did it. And finally, 7 minutes before the show was over, the camera went out. And Frank Heller went out, he said, "I can do it." He said, "Go ahead." And he ran the rest of the show. And the guy said, went in the next day and said, "Hire him as a director." He was that patient. He was a sponge. He absorbed everything. He was just marvelous. The best, the most daring director I ever worked with. Mm-hmm. I remember I played a person who could only move my neck. These were all live shows. Mm-hmm. And by Friday, I was bored. It was live on Sunday. He came to me 5 minutes before the show and said, "You can't move your neck." "What are you talking about, Bob?" "It's all I got." "Only with the greatest pain." Well, it just renewed. He worked with Tony Perkins in the show. Tony played a guy who was a little slow, was a dishwasher, was loving Kip Stanley. And he had wonderful behavior all during the week. I was then studying to be a director. I would go with Bob, we were very close. But there was nothing to hang it on, but great behavior. I said, "What did he say?" "I'll get him." 20 minutes before they went on the air live, he went to Tony and he said, "I'm going to give you an action to play. And anytime you believe it, you got to believe it though. You could say, 'I can do it.'" They pinned his salary on his... You say, if you believe it, you can carry it in your pocket. But you got to believe you can say it. They're all prepared if you say it. So now, all through the show, when they go to do that, he wants to say it. And he hung all his behavior on that clothesline. And he was so brilliant. He got a contract with Paramount the next day. But this is the kind of courage that Robert... And he finally directed To Kill a Mockingbird, and wonderful, and Pearson story.
That's such a director thing to do. I mean, to give you something that you can then explore and work with.
I've been around 60-some years. 57 years.
Nothing like
3 directors I've worked with that I've liked.
That
I've really respected. That I don't get ahead of it for the first 4 days.
Right.
You can't help it. Any actor will get ahead of the directors because they know it all, but you know your character well. It's very hard.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about some of the stresses of working on live television. I mean, live theater is one thing, but live television is quite another. The audience is in millions.
We were brought up on it. I mean, it sounds so egotistical about the things I'm going to say. When we were called to do live television, we were trained for the theater.
Right.
So we were learning what to do with characters, how to utilize rehearsals. Mm-hmm. So we came, in a way, we were overqualified. Because we knew this much. Television said, we only need this much. Yeah. Now, they've even confined it more, unfortunately. Yeah. But we were fortunate enough that we had that experience. I mean, you had Patty Chayefsky was writing for the theater. You had Sidney Lumet was directing for the theater. So that we were trained for that, to do Ibsen, to do short. I mean, I couldn't do those things, but I tried. I did do, believe it or not. Right. Oscar Wilde once I played. We spoke metaphorically. I mean, I could hardly say it, but you went up to stock and you tried it. You had, because that's how you made a living. Right. So that we were good at that, and all the actors, the Eli Wallachs and the Tony Franciosa's and the Paul Newman. That's what we were doing then. We were doing live television, and we had wonderful directors, and we always had rehearsal. Right. And that's where your performance is in the rehearsal. Yeah. And we only have one tool as an artist, and that's selectivity. That's the only tool you have. The talent you have to take for granted. But you select what to do. Right. And you need time to select. If you're a painter, and you're constipated and your wife has rejected you, and you go to paint a line, it's probably going to be severe and harsh in color. But if you take a laxative and your wife is good to you, the next day you soften that line and you pastel the color. And finally, after a few months, it's a cumulative thing of all of your dimensions. That's what it should be. I do an imitation of a director at Universal who says, okay, action. Jesus Christ, this guy's terrible. Like, he's ruining, he doesn't know what's up. She's worse than he is. They're ruining it. Cut! Print it. That's
sad but true.
Yeah. That's what I say.
Wow.
So that in rehearsals is where you select, where you add colors, you play a little angry one day, then you go and you soften it, and you sleep with it. You go to bed with it. You go to the bathroom with it. It's always with you. I mean, Janice and I are going to do on Golden Pond, and I can't get it, but I know when we get in rehearsal that I'll be able to then play with it, think about it, go home, and it comes to you. It's so wonderful. There's nothing like theater, nothing like it. I just did a Presidio Med. It's a good show, but it's boring, boring. Sit around, work with a girl, a good actress, and she had a crying scene. 14 takes, because nobody had the courage to say print it. She got a cold, she lost her voice, she had to take cortisone, and finally they printed the third one anyway. And they say, nobody has the courage. 8 days to shoot a show. We shot Quincy in 6 days. We never went over. Because it was the first take, I'd say, print it. Then the guy would say, we went over a bump. They'll think a plane flew overhead, don't worry about it. Never got a complaint. Gee, it was a little bumpy or something. If the content is good and the acting is good, it works.
Right. How long did you stay in New York before you started?
I was in New York a long time. I was in New York about 26 years.
And what brought you out to Los Angeles the first time?
The first time? I don't know. First time. First time I came out was in 1954. I drove out with Frank London and John Marley. We drove out because I didn't want to get married.
So you left town is what happened.
And I was working in New York then. I mean, all the time. And I got it on a Wednesday, and I started working on a Friday. I never stopped.
Wow.
I worked all the time. Conflicts in television, live television. And it's when I did that Petrified Forest. And everything. And I got a telegram from John Forsythe that he was doing detective story in stock. And would I come back and play Lieutenant Monahan for $150 a week? I said, is he crazy? Are they crazy? I got a place with a swimming pool. I'm driving a brand new car. I just bought a convertible. I said, they're out of their minds. But that day I started a new show. I forget the name of it, but it was a live show. And I went into it. I always kept my script loose. And because I got this telegram, I began to hear the performances. And I saw that this is what I was settling for. This is what was my level now. And I was I had a fight with a leading man. Again, I threw the script on the table because it was the last. And it went everywhere. And a little character woman went, ooh. And that was the only reaction. So I went on. I called during lunch and I said, I finish here on Thursday, I'll be home on Friday. I'll start rehearsal on Monday, I'll be there. Now I had to go tell the guy, you gotta take the car back. He said, well, you can't take it back. I said, then I'll drive it to New York and you'll never see it again. But that's when I went back to New York. Now I go back to New York. And I go to see this girl I didn't want to marry, Brett Summers. Terrific. She taught me more about acting than anyone ever could. So I'd done a show about I was a drunken counterfeiter on Treasury Men in Action or something. It was going to be on. I said, I want you to see this. There's something wrong. I don't know what it is. So we watched it. I said, what? She said, well, it's good. I know what? She said, oh, no. No, tell me. I want to know. Don't tell me. She said, well, it's too neat. Too much. You did your work too well. There are no loose ends. You rehearsed it at home too well. You came in, you knew it too much. And I was very gracious. When's the last time you worked? You telling me, when did you work last? And I tore in there, but she was very nice.
Yeah.
So about a week later, I did a live show where I was a punch-drunk fighter. Justice, I think it was called. And I said, all right, smartass, what do I do? I'm a punch-drunk. What do I do? He said, well, what happens to punch-drunk for fighters? And we talked, and I said, well, sometimes you get a cauliflower ear. They can't hear.
Right.
He said, why don't you go to rehearsal and stuff cotton in your ear so that you really can't hear and see what happens. Right. Well, you put cotton out of here.
Yeah.
Suddenly behavior. And it started, and I saw it. So I began to allow things to happen. It was live. One day I'd been in the business quite a while and worked quite a bit.
Right.
And it was a moment where Jerome Cowan comes out to tell me as a lawyer that he can't help my friend who's in jail. Right. And I'm near a telephone booth. And it was live. And when he told me this, I was so frustrated, I hit my head against the telephone booth out of anger that I couldn't help my friend. Paul got a drink, came out at the end of the show. He said, why did you tell me we were going to do this? I'd have gotten a close-up of it. And I said, Paul, it's the first time in all the years I've worked that I did it for the fat lady. That was mine. I was like being cleansed inside, and like a Turkish bath, but inside. Yeah. I knew what she meant about freedom, right. About doing it for your ego, for your filter, and then please them. But you got to please yourself first. Yeah. And it was the beginning of learning how to work. Yeah. And now whenever I'd get a show, yeah. I ended up marrying her because I owed her for that thing. And I would say, so how do I do this? And she would tell me, oh, in other words, I'm so blind. I would mimic it because I didn't want to give it. She'd say, yes, that's the way. And I would do it, and then one day I did a show. And I thought I was quite good live, and I came home, because I'd be home in 20 minutes. Right. She said, what were you doing? It was so terrible. She said, a crying scene. I said, but it was good. I said, it was genuine. She said, yeah, but the camera was right there. It was sitting in the middle of love that it came close. Yeah. So she said, it was terrible. You got to be careful. The next day, Dory Sherry called me and said, I wish I had something in the play. You were so wonderful last night. So what I said, Dory Sherry, because she said, you want to believe him? On me. I wasn't married to him. Yeah.
You also, you did some episodes of Twilight Zone, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Playhouse 90 I did was what got me Gypsy. That was written by Rod Serling, the Playhouse 90, which is also an experience. I mean, one thing leads one. Yeah. I did it with Art Carney. It was wonderful to work with. I played an agent. He was a writer. And one of his shows was finally produced, and the next day in a hotel room, we read the reviews, which were wonderful. And we had dialogue. In the rehearsal, we had 17 days rehearsal. God, 17 days rehearsal. Oh, my goodness. Well, while we were rehearsing, started to enjoy the reviews and started laughing, and couldn't say the lines. It was just the joy. So Frank Chapman was directing, and he called Rod, and he said, they're having such a good time reading the reviews, but they're not saying the lines. What do you think? Rod said, no. Those lines are very important. I want to hear them. Let me come down and see it. So he came down, and he watched us, and he said, no, I don't care if I ever hear the lines. The joy that I want from the acceptance of his play is more important. I mean, I loved him. Yeah. So when I was in Gypsy, Rod called me and he said, there's a Twilight Zone I wrote I would like you to do. I said, I'm in there for 2 years. He said, he said, I know you got 2 weeks off in January. I'd like you to come out and do it. So I said, okay. I went out. So I had to play a trumpet. So I had a guy in the orchestra taught me how to finger and how to play the trumpet. I worked with him for about a month on that. And then I went out and Rod Serling, I mean, his words, to roll his words around in your mouth is a privilege and a joy. I just loved working and doing his sounds. So I did it. That's another place where, so now I'm doing the show 3 days, 1 day rehearsal, 3 days. I'm working with a director who was worth $25,000 a year then. He loved me. He hired me as doctors, psychiatrists, Marines. Now he's directing this show. He's good with cameras. Won a lot of awards. So there's a moment he says, Jack, he wanted me to do something. So I did. I said, it's not right, Don. It's not honest. I wouldn't do that. He said, boy, it looks good. I got the camera. I said, well, it doesn't feel. I'll try it again. So I tried it again. I said, it's not honest, Don. He said, Jack, would I give you a bum steer? And I knew that was the moment of truth. And I said, Don, do you think I really care? I said, you want me to crawl into your head and be what you want me to be. Next week, I'm going to work with another director. I have to crawl in his head and be what he wants me to be. It'll go on until I'm a chameleon. There's only one person with me all the time, me. I have to please me. Now, in pleasing me, I got to please you, otherwise I'm out of business.
Yeah, right.
But if not, I'll find another way to please me that pleases you. Yeah. But I will not eliminate this filter, this ego. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. And he wouldn't give in. So I called Rod down. And Rod saw it both ways. And he said, we'll do it Jack's way. That was 1960. I still haven't worked for that guy. But again, it's the best man ever. We're good friends.
Yeah.
I see him at the racetrack. But I never worked for him. But
I mean, it's so inspiring to hear that you were able to hang on to this filter, as you call it. But I mean, others might call it artistic integrity. And it seems like there's an assault on that these days. It's very hard.
Well, it shouldn't be. You got to understand what it meant to me. I mean, I was 23 years old. I had a million jobs. I had no future. I had nothing.
Yeah.
I found I had some talent as an actor.
Right.
And from that moment on, I was accepted. Though they called me, the 27 virgins called me the gangster at school. But I was accepted at school. I worked and I got on the honor roll because I was accepted at school. When I went to New York, when I worked, they accepted me.
Right.
It gave me identity, it gave me integrity, it gave me a name. It finally gave me money, it gave me stature. How could I be disloyal to it? It was I got to tell you about the Brett in 1949. That's how I got an audition for Roberts. I did Bury the Dead at ELT. And they had wonderful showcases then. And agents came and producers came and agents came. And preview night, I did it. I played the sergeant. And all young actors like to belt and scream and yell. Yeah. And I was playing it to the hilt. And she came back. I said, what do you think? She said, again. I said, what is it? She said, well, it's a good actor giving the bad performance. I said, why? She said, go home and look at all the lines you don't have to shout. Because you're shouting too much. Find the ones you don't have to shout. Yeah. And I went home that night. Well, I didn't go home. I walked in the park, which was safe in those days. Yeah. Till 5 in the morning, there was not one line that I had to shout. Not one. And I didn't shout one line, and I got the job, and I got the audition. But it shows you how wrong that you need that third eye out there. It's so important. Yes. Someone has to point it out to you so that you can do the research and do the study.
You've been fortunate to be able to work with people who have a good eye and who are...
Oh, yes. Oh, God.
Did you pass that along then to others? I mean, did you provide third eyes to, another set of eyes to people?
I'm a lousy director.
Well, how about just as a critique, for
I try.
Yeah.
I try, with actors. But it's very presumptuous to tell another actor, they're not doing it well or right. But I tried teaching. I don't have the patience. Yeah. And somebody's going to tell me, don't you tell me how to read a line. Because I say, no, don't you see what it means? But it's interpretation. I'm not good at it. I love acting. I don't want to produce. I don't want to direct. I don't want to do any of those things. Right. I love acting, and that's all I ever wanted to do.
Was there ever a time where there was a dry spell for you? I mean, did you ever have, it looks like when you go back and look at
Once I started working, 46 to 49, I starved. I mean, literally starved. 3 days without... Because I did a show at Charlie. We did, not at January 16th at the Y. Well, if you're rehearsing and you're doing... You can't work. You can't run an elevator. You can't work. Yeah. We used to work like at Easter. We'd deliver for the post office. Special deliveries. And because we'd get tips. Then we'd freeze. And we'd run back after we delivered them all, and we'd meet at the room and get a bucket of hot water. And I would put in a foot, and he would put in one foot, and then he'd put in the other to warm our feet. And we'd have two shirts, two white shirts, that I would wash in the tub, and Charlie would iron. And he was a good ironer. But to see Charlie, we had two wooden milk cases. Charlie with those muscles. It was incongruous. And that's how we had...
Do you remember which job got you your Screen Actors Guild card?
I didn't get it acting. I got it being a stage manager in stock, which is silly. A woman who ran a theater said, if you'll stage manage 3 shows and act in 1 without pay, I'll give you your equity card. And that's what she did. And I worked as stage manager. And the Winslow Boy with Ian Keith was a wonderful actor, classical actor. And one day, he's doing the Winslow Boy, and I thought he went up. And I and I said the line. After he said, dear boy, I'll let you know when I need a line. So then about 2 days later, he was coming, and he came up to me, and he looked at me through the curtain like that, and I knew he needed the line. And I thought, then they started drinking again. And there used to be a show on WOR, the Broadway Theater. It was on 5 nights a week. They would do a Broadway show, the same Broadway show. It would run for 5 nights. It was a one. And Nash Automobiles was the sponsor. He got drunk one night. He came when he did the commercials live. How many of these tin cans do you need to buy one English cars? Woo! That was it.
That was that,
But he would carry a bottle of milk. He was a wonderful actor. He told stories. I love stories. I love stories about what I've become, an old actor. I loved them. And Joe Sweeney, I wrote a television show about these guys because I loved them. One guy was an old actor. He was an extra. He said, I was known all over the world. In 1935, I was known, my face was all over the world. And the poster, the world's most average man. And he was the world's most average man. All over the world. I love this guy. He said, but I'm an actor. And I wrote about him, and I wrote about Joe. They did it on, I was in analysis, and this is what I mean about knowing. I was in analysis. And the guy, it was like my father. Anyway, one day he rejected me, and I thought, and I was mad, and I cried at my father's funeral 20 years after he died there. So I didn't go back. He said, come on back, come on. He called me on the phone. I won't charge you, come back. I was paying $10 a visit in those days.
Wow.
$10. So I went and he said, we made a contract 1.5 years ago. I would help you and you would pay me. Now for 1.5 years, you have upheld your end of the contract. You have paid me. Now, I say to you, no, we don't get along so much anymore. No. Why do you accept it? Why don't you say to me, no, we made a contract. Why don't you know your worth? Now, he said to me, I guess many times, but I heard it that day. And that very day, I got called for a craft live. Now, I did 3 live television shows, hours, in 2.5 weeks. That's how, it was, one of them, they gave me $300 a show, but that's what I did.
Right.
One was directed by Bob Mulligan, one by Sidney Lumet, and one by Billy Graham.
Wow.
So I was working all the time. So I said, the $450 they were going to give me. I said, no, what's the top? She said, $750. I said, that's what I want. She said, they won't give it to you. I said, I don't care, Lee. That's what I'm worth. I was hot from what the guy told me. So they turned me down. I said, I'm going to sit down on the Monday when they go into rehearsal. And the following Wednesday, when they go on the air live, by that time I'm going to write a script. And I did. I wrote a script, and they bought it for $2,750. They bought the craft. It was about old actors. And it was, but they made it about, it wasn't about show business, but they made it show business. But they bought it, and they said, good, now all it needs is a couple of young kissable girls. I said, what are you talking about? It's about old actors. Nobody wants to see old actors. I said, why'd you buy it? Yeah. Jack, you don't have to do it. We got people on the staff that will do it. So I called my agent. I said, I don't think this is well. Let's get it back. He said, Jack, that's the business. That's what you have to do.
Right.
Well, why do you compromise? You can't. I said, if I had taken it back, I might have had a career in writing. But it was no fun. And after that, I kept censoring myself. So one other thing I wrote that Walter Matthau started called Code of the Corner. Another craft. He came day rehearsal, handed me $10,000. 1956, handed me $10,000 in cash. What's this for? Hold on. About 3 hours later, 2 guys came in like that. He said, give me the money. Gave him $10,000. He said, if I don't come up with the other 25 in 3 weeks, they'll kill me. He owed everybody. He was the worst gambler, the sweetest man, but the worst gambler.
Well, let's go to some of the member questions
See,
that
that's
we
what I
have here
mean.
tonight.
If you ask me what time it is, I'll tell you how the clock was made.
We're having a great time here. Are you kidding me? This is great. Let's see here. We've done that one. Yeah, we've done that one. Well, this will lead us into a whole another piece of this. This is Liza Frank asks, did you have to audition for your part in The Odd Couple? How did you get that role?
That was fun. No, I had replaced Walter Matthau on Broadway in The Odd Couple. And done fairly well. Now, Paramount didn't want me because they said, he doesn't do comedy, he only does drama, because that's all they'd see. But Gary Marshall fought for me. So I had assumed that he saw me and that he liked what I'd done. So I'd been in it a while. I said, you saw me replace Walter? He said, no. I said, why'd you fight for me for The Odd Couple? He said, I saw you in Gypsy, and Ethel was singing to you, and she was spitting all over you. He said, and you never showed it. I said, that's a good actor.
Who knew? You thought it was all that other work, but it was Had you met Tony Randall before that point?
I'd worked with Tony. We had done a terrible show. He knows the name of it. It was a summer replacement show. I played a crook who was a chef, and he played a professor who was a show. It was a terrible show. Awful. We talk about it all the time. So I'd known him then for that week, but I'd been an admirer of his in Mr. Peepers. He was brilliant. I mean, in Mr. Peepers, he was brilliant. He had to walk that fine line of being sort of pompous and officious and being a human being, and he did it. Nobody could ever play Oscar. I don't care. Felix, the way he did it. Nobody. I mean, Jack Lemmon was good, but he couldn't touch what Tony did. He's brilliant to work with, and he's the most giving actor you could work with. I love him. He just stole a play from Al Pacino.
Is that right? No kidding.
Yes, he did. He's Arturo. He stole it.
Well, you guys had such an amazing chemistry together. Did you know it right off the bat?
I hear that all the time. You and Ethel had great chemistry. If you got two good people who are working together, who love acting, you're going to have good chemistry. Doesn't work otherwise. I mean, Tony and I, we worked the same way. We studied under the same kind of teachers. We loved acting, and we respected each other, and we had good material. So there's no chemistry there. Chemistry comes out of all those things.
But you guys, I mean, it looks like you must have gotten on pretty well off screen too. So I mean,
he told if you're open, he told me a great deal, particularly about improvising.
Yeah.
In every show where there was a teaching scene, it would be like, Tony teaches Jack manners, and he'd read 4 blank pages. And then he would start, then we would start. And he would start to teach me. We'd pick some kind of incident, say I'm eating, and I would do sloppy things. No, and he would correct me. Then at the end of the day, the writers would come and they would refine it. And we would do that for 4 days until we improvised something. Now, I had to teach him football. Tony knows about football. He's a big fan. So I realized, I said, okay, you got to go down. So he comes down, but he goes over here, which provokes me into saying, we're not the Rockettes. Now he comes over here, And he puts his face right against me. And I said, I don't want to dance with you. So what he did was he provoked me. And that's what improvisation is. Because people get up, they talk. It's not talk. It's provoking. And he taught me how to provoke. And it's the most valuable lesson I've had. Because I never liked improvisation until I learned from Tony how to do it. He was a master at it.
That's great. That's great. Let's see here. Marcy Goldman asks, I understand that on The Odd Couple, your dressing rooms, you and Tony Randall's, were very Oscar and Felix, and that Tony Randall's dressing room had beautiful carpeting and opera playing and such, and that yours was full of cigar smoke and racing forms. Is this true?
I wouldn't know. I wasn't allowed in this room. No, Tony's not a neat. He's not a neat freak, but he's the kind of guy. Like he's got suits now that are 40, 50 years old. I'm not lying. He never has them cleaned. He says it takes the moisture out of them or something. But he's the kind of guy that can put on a suit that's having 40 years and look good. I get a new coat. I put it on. Looks like it's a rag that There are certain guys who can do that. And he is that way. He had a pair of pants that he sent away to Pepsi-Cola for $2. $2. Pepsi-Cola, it had written all over Pepsi-Cola. It was a walking ad. Bought on them, it looked classy. But he wasn't a neat freak.
Yeah, okay. And you were, do you have a little bit of Oscar in you? Or?
Yeah, I got a lot of Oscar in me. In that I'm not dirty. I shower. But I am messy.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Melody, no last name here, asks, you and Walter Matthau both played Oscar Madison. Did you know each other personally?
Yes, very well. I played poker with Walter in 1950. Earlier than that. Over 50 years ago, I would play. He's the worst gambler in the world. He would get impatient. I bet you $20, I beat you. Get a higher spade than you. Walter tried to eke out a bucket. And he was tough. Don't ever take one of his checks, because he was a bad payer. But Walter was, no, I know Walter very, very well. As I say, I wrote this show for him that he started. But I knew, he was an amazing guy. He had about 30, but those days, 1950, you could go to an old barber shop. You can get a haircut, a shave, a suntan, a massage, a shoe shine, a mannequin, really. For $30, you can get it all done. And get it all. They did all those services. And he had about $40. And he went into it. I was with him. He had it all done. He was broke. He gave his last $4 tip or something. I said, Walter, how could you do that? He said, if that's all the money I'm ever going to have, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to make a lot of money. I said, how do you know that? You're not beautiful or anything. He said, oh, I'm going to be a big star. He knew it. Then I saw him in a play called Twilight Walk that Claire Booth lost. And I knew he was going to be a big star. And he was a brilliant, audiences loved him. When I replaced him, I watched him for a while. And one performance, his upper plate got loose. So he played the whole first act with a cigar clenched between his teeth. So as a joke, and he got laughs, as a joke, I went out and got some Polidem, which he used. In the middle of the second act, they got loose again, and he turned to the audience. He said, my plate is loose. They applauded for 5 minutes. They just loved him. They just loved him. He was like a big bear.
Yeah. Again, seems like a guy who couldn't lie out there. I mean, it just all seems so
well, I don't think I would want to work with him. No, he wasn't there. He was out for himself.
Yeah.
You know? But that's what makes big stars. But, I mean, Art Carney was the sweetest man that ever lived. I mean, he is still the sweetest man that ever lived. But when he would take his curtain call, he would have to go in the kitchen, and Walter was off stage. And he'd go in the kitchen, and during that moment when the curtain come down, you'd hear pots and pans squirming. And he'd come out smiling, but Walter had a way of kind of aggravating him. But he was brilliant. He was brilliant.
Richard Baldwin asks, I read that in the first season of The Odd Couple, it was a one-camera show, and then it moved to a 3-camera show with a studio audience. Do you think that changed or helped to improve the show?
Everything. First show, we did 15 shows with 1 camera. It was terrible. One show was okay, because it was so damn well written. It was terrible. It wasn't funny. It was one kid with no rehearsal. It was terrible. So we were canceled every year. You got to understand. I mean,
This is a recurring theme in your life here.
It was a flop. I mean, it was never out of the bottom 10. It was 62, 65. But it was the whole show, license, salaries, cost $125,000.
Right.
The kids on Friends make that much in 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it was there were 15 shows, and a guy wanted me to do a movie, called Paramount. They said, oh yeah, he'll be out. We're canceling it. So Tony and I went into ABC, and we went into an office, and we called every newspaper in the country. I mean, we were there for like 6 days, every little, protesting the laugh track.
Right.
Fred Allen's famous words, do you realize how many of them are dead? So we said, we want to get rid of it, Well, they all publicized it, and we got about 250,000 letters. And so they, okay, let us do the last 9, which they don't really care, but let's do the last 9 with 3 cameras. And then, of course, it was
And did you have an audience?
Then we had
right
an
from the
audience.
start? Yeah.
And the audience just roared. And we had good writers. I mean, Gary Marshall, Harvey Miller, and Jerry Belson. They were sensational. And, I mean, great lines that would break me up. I mean, just one line that really killed me, I could never get. I saved Tony's life, and he's so grateful. He can't do enough for me. And I come out for breakfast, and the big picture of him is in the chair. And the big balloon says, thanks. And he's looking at me with that smile. That's driving me crazy. And so Al Molinaro says, well, tell him to make chicken. Tell him you're choking a bone. He'll save your life, and you'll be even. It'll be okay. Good idea. So we do it, but I got no button. So he saves me, but we had no button. So a guy came and saw it. And the line was, I said, you saved my life. And he said, no. I said, yeah, I had a bone in my throat. He said, no, that chicken had no bones. So I said, oh, and we had no button. Finally, I came on the button. No bones? How did it walk? But he came up with it. What's kind of on mine comes up with it. That's a comic genius.
That's great. Larry John Wayne asks, of the 2 characters in Odd Couple and Quincy, which was most like your own personality?
They were both me. I'd always wanted to be a muckraker. I've been a big fan of Upton Sinclair. I read as a child. And I read all of his books, and Dos Passos. And when they called me Monique James, who was my agent and then worked for Universal, sent me Quincy. And I read it. It was Cops and Robbers. It was a terrible script. And I forgot to call her back. So about a week later, she called me. She said, what are you, a big man? You don't call me back, I send you as the pilot. So I made up. I said, I'll tell you what it was, Monique. I've been thinking about it. After all, I mean, it's 2 heroes in one. You know, the guy's a cop and a doc. I'm talking myself into it. I'm like, geez, that's right. It's 2 heroes in one. This guy could really be a muckraker. So I said, okay, let me have a conference. So I had a meeting with the writer, Glenn Larson, just not my cup of tea. He created it, but he stole it from somebody else. He helped to create it. And the producer. So I told him what I wanted to do. Okay, they said, the first 4, we already written, but we know what you want. If it goes to an hour, okay. So now, the first show, I was 54 years old at the time. The first show was about a giant killer. He was so strong that he could break the back of a man like a dry twig. And that he once picked up a man who was dead and put him in a noose. And how do we capture this guy? This 54-year-old Jew punches him in the mouth and catches him. I said, fellas, come on. But so I said, you'll never see this again, ever, ever. So I found from Judy two things that look like they're, put his eyes out with your thumbs, something. Right. So I said, I can't do this anymore. So now came the hour show. They said, I said, they're going to do, but they didn't change it. They still kept doing Cops and Robbers, and I said, I can't do this anymore, I quit. Yeah. So I quit. And they said they were going to sue me and all that. I said, I don't care, sue me. So the ratings, luckily, were pretty good. So they said, what do you want? I said, I want him out. He's the creator. I said, I don't care. It's him or me. I can't do Cops and Robbers. I got to do meaningful shows. I can't do it. So they gave him a pot full of money. He was very smart. He got a residual on every show that was more than I made. He made a lot of money. And they got rid of him. I met him a year later at a party. He came up to me. I said, why do you talk to me? I don't like what you represent in the theater. Why do you come up and say hello? He said, stay well, you're making me rich. I said, touche. Yeah. But I turned the show into what I wanted. It wasn't it was my show. Yeah. I got 4 wonderful writers. I know writers don't think I love them. I love good writers. I don't like typists who call themselves writers. But I love writers. I worship writers. Yeah. It's the most difficult of all the art forms. And I got 4 guys, 3 guys in a gown. They wrote 17 of the shows in us, and they were brilliant. And we started from scratch. Every show, everything was authenticated. It was wonderful. And we'd get letters that would say, you saved my child's life. I didn't know about sudden infant death syndrome. I learned it from your show. I had legislation passed. I appeared before congressional committees. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. One of the wonderful things about it, one of the perks, I had a brother. I had 4 brothers and a sister, but one brother had cancer. He was 63. He was living in Philadelphia. He was a flop in everything he had ever done. Mm-hmm. He owed lots of money. He worked so hard, but he just was a lousy businessman. Right. He opened up a paint store. He consulted. He lost money and everything. So I went to see him in Philly, and I said, you can't stay here, Pete. It's snowing. You fall down, you break a bone. It'll kill you. He said, well, I said, come out to California, work for me. He said, well, what's the difference? Come on out. So he got him an apartment here. I got him an office. And the first week, I didn't need the limo because we were shooting on, so I sent the limo to pick him up. And the 8th day, he said, where's my limo? But he was there about a month. He came in the office as secretary. He was very funny. He came, he said, I got an idea for a show. I said, 63. I said, Pete, please. Yeah. Come on, what do you, just take the $600 and live. No, he said, I'm not a poor girl. He tells me the idea. I said, well, it's a good idea, but there are so many holes in it. He does research on it. He comes back 2 weeks later, and this show I did brought me before a congressional committee. Ronald Reagan signed into law the orphan drug bill. It was one of the most successful shows I'd ever done. How about that? He then came to me with a picture of 5 handicapped kids on horses that were getting equestrian therapy. And he said, there's a question. What are you talking about? They're going to close that place. Now, 5 kids are not happy because they were taking care of horses. It's got to be something. And I investigated it. And we gave them $25,000 and they kept the place open. And we did a wonderful show on the credit. But you always put a murder mystery in it. Yeah. But that's what we did. And we did 17 of his ideas. He lived 63 years as a businessman when he was an artist. You could live your entire life doing the wrong thing.
How about that? That's amazing. That's amazing. How many seasons did you guys go on Quincy?
7.5 seasons.
7.5 seasons.
Could have done more, but
it was just such a great show. You did a lot of research in preparation for it too, didn't you? Medical examiners and such.
Yeah, I go to the morgue. First time I went, it's kind of like, but you get used to everything. Yeah. And you go, there'd be 6 guys doing autopsies, and they'd be ordering lunch. And make sure that corned beef doesn't have too much fat. Give me that kidney spread. And they're cutting it. And then there was 2 young girls had been killed, and their heads were cut off, their arms and their legs, so they wouldn't be identified. And they were on a white paper. And this guy was showing me, you see that the skin is not scalloped. So that means it was cut cleanly, so, and it's on an angle, so it's an overhead. So he started to explain all the things, and it became clinical and not gory until from one of the bodies dropped an ant on that white paper. And the reality of it really shook me more than the dead bodies. It suddenly hit me, wow. But it was not about the dead.
No.
It was about the living. It was instant research. Oh, we never had a body. Now they show you the bodies and the blue and the black and they got soft. It's immaterial.
Right.
We never had a body there,
Right.
but we revered that body. We spoke in whispers, and that body told us about life. It pointed us to a murderer who could no longer murder, or if there was going to be an epidemic. It showed us how we could help the living, and that's the way we viewed it. And that's the way I always viewed it. It was to help the living. It was not about the dead. But people, when I did Odd Couple afterwards, I was offered a lot about, sitcoms.
Right.
And Fred
Right.
Zinnemann, what the hell was it? Silverman, a genius. he was head of ABC, and he called me to do a comedy series. I said, I already did it the best. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
He went to a little blue book he had, and he read it. I said, I don't want to do it. So when he heard I was doing this, he called my agent. He wouldn't do those shows, and now he's playing an undertaker.
Just didn't get it, did he?
They didn't know. The undertaker, they didn't know. But nobody knew about a coroner then.
Juanita Perez Cotton asks...
Well, you got a lot of cards.
I do. We're having, I hope you have a lot of time.
I got tons of them today.
Asks, would you do another Quincy? If they wanted to do a...
I got a
revisiting?
2-hour Quincy that is more powerful than anything I've ever done. CBS put up, or TNN, somebody put up $75,000 for the pilot that I worked on that could save so many lives. It's true. It actually happened, and I can't get it done. Been 3 years, can't get it done. It's a reunion with the guys, but it's a great story. It's so true. It does indict the oil companies in many ways. And under these grounds that we do, in America, there are 2,200,000 miles of pipes that carry oil and gas that have been there 40, 50 years that are rotting.
Right.
And hundreds of lives are lost every year in explosions and fires. But they're now over big neighborhoods where the oil companies don't want. They'd rather pay a $30 million fine than dig it. And that's what it's about. An actual incident that happened in Bellingham, Washington. An actual incident where 3 kids died, but can't get it done. I would do specials. I would love to do 3 or 4 specials a year, but you can't get it done.
Do you think that part of the reason you can't get that particular episode that you're describing there produced is because of resistance from oil companies and sponsors?
I want to think so, being an Upton Sinclair man, being a muckraker. I have no proof of it. I have no idea why. And nobody can find out. I've had big shots go that want to do it. Offered them $3 million to do it. They would say they would do it for $3 million. No, they would say give them $300,000 just to use the title once. I said no. So I don't know what. I stepped on a lot of toes when I was there, but they've changed hands so many times.
You stepped on toes?
Only producers.
Joy Mincy Powell asks, I'm an actress who uses a wheelchair, and I've encountered the industry's prejudice with disabled actors. What have your experiences been working again after your surgery on your throat?
Well, first of all, we did Quincy's with a girl in a wheelchair, a wonderful actress. We did 2 shows with her. She was wonderful. She could hold the baby. That was the show, by the way, in which we had legislation passed on the orphan drug bill.
Yeah. Okay.
And I hired, because there were then more, I guess, 45 terrible diseases, which nobody was doing any research on, because there wasn't enough profit in them.
Right.
So there was no hope. So we introduced a bill in which pharmaceutical companies would be granted tax write-offs if they would investigate
And research.
these and do research on these. And the first show was about that, didn't work. Almost worked, didn't work. So I said, I'm going to do a political show on the same subject. And I hired 500 people afflicted with these orphan diseases and used them as protesters. And it was wonderfully effective. And it got them to sign the bill.
That's great.
And I don't work, they don't call me television anymore. And my voice, they now can manipulate those things that I sound pretty good. But I know how it works. They say, what about Jack Klugman with that part? Yeah, that's good. What about his voice? Well, I heard it's okay. Yeah, I don't know. They don't want to be bothered. They don't realize what it means. It's terrible, terrible, terrible prejudice and terrible bias that I'm glad to say we never had in the show. I wish I had more freedom, but we didn't. Now I would have more freedom even than I had then. But, because I understand it more. But for years and years and years, I didn't work. It worked.
How did you handle that on a personal level? I mean,
I
it
was
had been devastating.
I was devastated. For 3 years, for 3 years I had no sound. I was just whisper. Right. And I met a guy, Gary Catono, who gave me exercises that gave me a sound. And again, it was Tony. Called me one day while I was doing exercise. I had a little sound. And he said, if we could do one performance of The Odd Couple on stage, I could get $1 million for my theaters. He wanted to start it. I said, I can't even talk to you on the telephone. Are you the stage? So Gary Catono said, tell him 6 months you'll be able to do it. I said, Gary, tell him. So I said, 6 months, he said I could do it. He said, okay, it's when I want to do it. So they set it for January, 6 months. And I worked, I exercised. Like Rocky, you know. And I did these violent exercises. And I got a sound. Much worse than this. I mean, it was a bad sound, but it was a sound. And you could, now we're in rehearsals, and it was so good to rehearse. The camaraderie. They didn't appreciate it, but we'd go out to lunch. But so I had forgotten about the difference in our voices. Now, $1,250,000 was paid by these patrons, some $25,000 for 10 seats in the table. They come to this theater. And before Oscar goes on, there's 8 minutes of the poker players with normal voices. And then I came on, and I said my first line, and count me out. And this is what I heard. Well, everybody became uncomfortable. And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing here? Am I crazy? What the hell am I doing here? It was like, I can't make this whole evening, the whole evening out of me. And I was and so I said to my next line, and I just hated Tony, I hated Gary, I hated everybody. And about a minute and a half later, after I said a few lines, I had a line in which somebody I said, I got green sandwiches and brown sandwiches. And they said, what's the brown? I said, it's either very new meat or very old cheese. And they did that, they laughed. And I heard the laugh, and they sat back, and they say, you know, you lose one arm, the other one gets twice as strong, and evidently my concentration became strong. And I went through the show, and when it was over, they gave us a standing ovation for a couple of minutes, and the curtain came down, and Tony and I were talking to each other on stage, and the stage manager came over, and he said, don't you hear them? They don't want, he said, they won't go. And nobody had left, and they lifted up the curtain, and they were still there, applauding, standing, for 5 more minutes. And they were crying, and we were crying. And well, it was the most memorable evening of my life. And Helen Hayes and Sylvia Sidney, whom I had both worked with, were in the theater. Between them, there were like 180 years. And Sylvia said to Helen Hayes, have you ever seen so much love in the theater go from the audience to the stage and back? And Helen Hayes said, I've never seen so much love in the theater. And then we went to the banquet, and Tony got up and he said, and now I want to introduce the gutsiest son of a bitch in the world. And I got up and said, I'm not the gutsiest son of a bitch in the world. I'm the luckiest son of a bitch in the world. And I was. It was a great night. And this is the thing. So I thanked Tony. And he refused to accept the thanks because he made it $2,250,000. Right. So he thought it had to be altruistic. I said, but you gave me a venue. Right. Nobody believed I was able to do it. Right. No, we were able to start the theater. And you have to accept my... It was very hard for him to accept it, but that brought me back to theater. About a year later, I did 3 Men on a Horse with him. Mm-hmm. My voice was a little better, not much. One of the reviewers said that I should give up the business, but I didn't.
That's what they told you at the beginning, though.
Yeah, well, that was...
They were wrong twice. They were wrong.
This guy had no reviewing of it. Well, they told me that when I did Gypsy, the reviewer said, Jack Klugman has a voice like a loud snore. Though amiable. I never understood that.
I can work with that. Okay.
That was Kenneth Tynan. So anyway.
That's great. You know what, I want to ask you, what was there sort of a sense of deja vu going back and doing Crossing Jordan? I mean, you know, there's another Mord?
No, not even close.
Didn't have anything.
No, those shows are not they're not really good. They're not about anything. They're not.
Okay.
They're really, it's a shame because they're talented people.
Yeah.
But nobody cares you change the line. I said, this doesn't make sense. And I said, change it. You couldn't do that with me. I mean, I'd say no. Unless you could have convinced me that it's wrong. Right. But you didn't make up lines.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Let's see here. Kelly.
That's what I mean by because I don't care if I ever do those shows again.
Right.
An agent called me and said, listen, could you get out of this Golden Pond? There's a television show that could be a series. I said, why would I get out of this play? To do a television show. Well, you know, it's a television. I said, no, fella, I'm not beginning a career, I'm ending one.
Pass. Kelly Rowan asks, as an actor, do you believe you should be open to playing any type of role without judgment, or I shouldn't because I don't like him or her or whatever it is as a person?
My God, you don't have to play Robin Frost. No, you got to play Hitler. You got to play whatever you're given, and you've got to stretch. I mean, I've stretched and been terrible. I've done plays close to me and been terrible. But when I did Oscar Wilde, I mean, Dr. Chasuble, my God almighty. But I learned from it, and you gotta do everything. That's what theater's for. You gotta stretch, you gotta risk, you gotta take chances. You gotta do it for yourself. The audience is there, and you hope you'll please them. You want to please them, but not before you please yourself. And if you do the best you can doing Dr. Chasuble, then you've accomplished your task.
Do you think some of the resistance to that sort of thing because people have a sense that, you know, bad characters are just all bad and that they don't look to explore them as the human being that they have to be? I mean,
well, a lot of people resent, for instance, that picture of Max, which the guy was kind of kind to Hitler. Right. But it's fiction and everything. But the Hitler was played as a terrible human being. Right. But he shows you a side, and you look, doesn't justify what that son of a bitch did to him. You hate him. Right. But wouldn't it be interesting? I saw Tony Hopkins play him, and he played him with some sympathy. I mean, he just, to people who loved him, he wasn't evil. Right. You say, why did they love him? And they show that side. Yeah. But, I think as an actor, as an artist,
you got to go for it.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
Great, thank you. Nathan Sabatka, age 9, asks, what was your most humiliating audition ever? At age 9, he's gone through a lot of them.
I got one. I forgot about. I got one. Somebody talked me like a fool. I was doing a play on Broadway, and John Gielgud was doing Hamlet. This is so embarrassing. and somebody somehow convinced me to go over and read for Claudius, the king. So I went up, and I went in, and John Gielgud was there, and I read. And before I finished, Gielgud came to the apron, And he looked at me, he said, is this some sort of joke?
Yikes.
I said, no. He said, oh, come on, it isn't a joke. I said, no. He said, Mr. Klugman, I've heard that you're a very good actor, and I'm sure you are, but this is a joke, isn't it? I said, no, it isn't. He said, thank you very much. That was, but he was right.
Yeah.
As I walked out, I started to laugh, because I realized how ridiculous. I had a similar thing. They're now a dear friend of Mike Nichols. I'd known a long time, and when I replaced Walter, to me, theater was always the most important medium. Right. So before I replaced him, I was out in California. I had about 3 weeks before I replaced him. Mike was directing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. So I got on the Warner Brothers set. And I said, Mike, I'm going to replace Walter. And he said, oh, good, kid, you'll be terrific. I said, yeah, well, I need some help. He said, what do you want me to do? I said, can we spend a couple of days? He said, Jack, I'm doing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I know, I said, but just, this is theater. Yeah. And just, maybe a couple of seconds. Jack's my first movie. I mean, it's a big movie. And I got so mad that how dare he put this over theater? And I said, yeah, well, this is not really a movie. It's more talk than it's a movie. And I made a fool, and I knew as I was saying it, what a fool I was making myself. So as I started to leave, my back was to me. He said, goodbye, Jack. Forever. I couldn't help but laugh as I was going on. He was so right. I was so
Seemed like a good idea at the time, though, huh?
I was so single-minded.
Yeah. All right, here's one. Tommy Heisler asks, do you have any advice for an actor coming back from a 3-year hiatus?
Theater, theater, theater. Work, work, work. You gotta work. You gotta find it wherever it is. I just came back. I just did 5 weeks in Nebraska. I did a wonderful play there. I then did 11 weeks in Kansas City. Not a very good play, but I had a good time. Management was wonderful. And I'm going now on the road, one-night stands. You gotta work. You can't quit. I got a very dear friend here who's a wonderful actor. A few years, there was no work and he quit. You can't do that. You can't. You gotta work. There is work somewhere. There's work, and you gotta do it. I feel it's what keeps me young and it keeps me active. I want to die on stage saying, and the name of the murderer is, and then go.
Good way to go. This is sort of similar to that last question. I have a hunch the answer might be, but Tansy Alexander asks, what do you attribute your longevity in the acting profession to, other than good luck? Work?
Work, work, work. I've never stopped growing. 3 years ago, I did The Price, and I found a freedom that I never had before. I was 77, 78. I found a freedom on that stage. You never stop learning and growing. I talked about my daughter on that stage, and she died. And I had just lost recently a stepdaughter that I love very much. And as I talked about it, I started crying. And the tears started to gush forward. And I did what I always did. Try to stop it. Try to stop those tears. I was embarrassed by the tears. But I would stop it in a dramatic way, so the audience would not know that I was embarrassed by it. I was very good at that. And I realized what I was doing. So I told the director the next day, I may go over on this, but let me go. Whatever happens. And I did it again, and I was thinking about my Leslie, and I just started crying, and I let it go like I had never done before. I must have cried for 5 minutes, and I knew I'd found this freedom, and now I go on stage like even here now. I'm free. First of all, I tell the truth. I mean, I will not lie. There are sins of omission, but I will not lie. And I'm free. I'm freer than I've ever been. So you can learn all the time, and that's it, being open for freedom.
That's great. Anita Van Tellinger asks,
I love these names.
Yeah. She's one of our staff members, by the way.
I wish that my mother had married a man with a shorter name.
She asks, what has been your most satisfying professional experience, if you can narrow it down to one?
Well, it can't be the one, but I love doing Rappaport. I love doing, but the price, the freedom I found in the price. And you know what? You want to say, Jesus, why didn't I learn this 30 years ago? Because you didn't. That's the way it is. You know, you got to play with the cards you're dealt, and you got to enjoy them. He's talking about why didn't I have it 30 years, so you're going to complain about what you didn't have 30 years ago, as opposed to what you have now. Lee J. Cobb was probably the best actor I've ever worked with in my life, except for Fonda. Except, he said to me one day, if you're the luckiest actor in the world, once in your lifetime you get to part like Willie Loman, then go jump off a bridge. Go jump off a bridge. Go kill yourself. It's an epitaph. It's not the end of your life. Life is not a monkey climb one end on top of the other. You're gonna climb, then you're gonna go. But you got to do the best you can every time. And after he was the salesman, he was offered Odette's wanted him to do The Country Girl, play the drunken actor. And he turned it down because he wanted to be a romantic hero. And he did a picture aptly titled The Man Who Cheated Himself, which he played a crooked cop. And I was standing, once we did Golden Boy together, and I was standing next to John Garfield. I'm going to drop a lot of names. Standing next to John Garfield, and Cobb went by, and Garfield said, we're two schmucks. He wants to be the matinee idol I am, and I want to be the actor he is. And I thought, Jesus Christ, there's nobody happy here. But it's it. The actor wants to be a singer, the singer wants to be an actor. I just want to be an actor, and I'm very happy. It's taken me a long time to appreciate this operation 14 years ago, in which I lost my right cord. And of course, I wish that hadn't happened, but I learned a lot, and I learned about life, and I get more enjoyment out of a day than I used to get out of a year. I live at the beach. I now see the ocean every day. My relationship with my children is better than it's ever been. It's just, there is something good to be. Every time I sit down to a lobster dinner, I feel privileged. It's just a good thing. And when I get a chance to work, they call me, and I do it. That's it.
That's great. Yeah. Lisa Marie asks, have you ever fallen in love with a co-star?
No. I don't even go to lunch with a co-star. I really don't. I always go alone. I never mingle with the cast. I never mix. I never go to dinner with them. Rarely. When I did, recently, people I love, like Dan Lauria, come and have lunch. No. Maybe after dinner, after the show, I'll have a drink occasionally. I just did a play in Kansas City. Where is it? And I never went out with I just don't do that. It's work.
Yes, he did once, and
Once.
he paid the bill.
Yeah. Once, but I don't. I'm not. I appear to be gregarious, but I'm not. I'm a private person, and And when I work, it's me and my work. That's what I love, and that's all that matters to me, more than anything, except my children.
Right. Dottie Healy asks, what is your favorite performance medium and what is the most difficult acting challenge? That's kind of a two-part question there.
Well, of course, it's the theater.
Yeah.
There is no challenge except doing it. There is no challenge. As long as you're good, you do it. You do it. No matter what. And there's ways of working. Your way is the best way, whatever way you use, but you get the result. Garfield told me he was in Paris, and he saw Jean Gabin in a play in which the woman insulted him, embarrassed him. He said, and Gabin, actually got red. I couldn't believe it. I ran back. Jesus, that was great. What'd you use? He said, I held my breath.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. And I asked Lee, I said, you studied a lot of sense memory exercises. Lee said, if you do a good play, any half-decent play, it's there. You don't have to go to anywhere but the play. If the play's not good, then you use sense memory. But usually the play will give it to you.
Michael Edelstein asks, are you still handicapping horses?
Badly, yeah. One of my horses ran, I don't know, two horses. One ran today, came in second.
Yeah. Oh.
He lost by half a length. Still a maiden.
Okay. Ed, the stage dad here, asks, have you ever had a problem with people thinking that you're an actual MD when you were doing
Oh,
it?
yeah, always.
Come up all
They would always say, listen, I got a pin like that. I said, I can only help you after you die. I can tell your spouses why you died and how you died, but I can't help you while you're alive.
We've done that one. Let's see here. This is a good one. Shelley Littlefeather asks, you've had a wonderful career in TV and theater. What are your future acting goals? Anything?
Just to work.
Just to keep working.
Just to work. Yeah, they're normal plays. I did salesman. Hope I can find a new play that has a kind of a challenge to it. I just did a play about blacklisting, which I loved, because I lived through the blacklist. I wasn't blacklisted, but I lived with Garfield and Cobb and Odets and worked in Golden when they were all blacklisted. And it was a wonderful play. Not a good play, but a wonderful play to do. And I enjoyed that. I just enjoy working. I mean, the play that we did in Kansas, not a great play, but had a good time.
Yeah. I asked you earlier how you got your Screen Actors Guild card, but you told me how you got your equity card. You remember your SAG card? Yeah, just too many
Screen
names.
Actors Guild.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
When I Screen Actors Guild, I did television.
Yeah, so it would have been probably the
That they went together. Didn't Screen Actors Guild? It was after.
Yeah, it was after. It would have been the live TV stuff.
And
then
it
the first film role.
Screen
or
Actors
something
Guild,
Yeah, yeah, just curious, you know. We like to compile these tapes, you know.
Last time I was here, we were on strike in this building.
That's right. You came down a couple of times.
Yeah,
on the strike.
a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's up in Sinclair.
Okay, let's see here. Mr. Larry Gelman right here.
Jack, whatever happened to the 27 versions?
I think about 10 remain virgins. but I worked with Seda Thompson, who was the brilliant actress. I did All My Sons with her. We went on tour. She was wonderful. Nancy Marchand became the mother in The Sopranos. She was wonderful. P.A. Love did a couple Broadway plays. I forget some of their names, but about 6 or 7 of them went on to become good actresses.
Are you still taking a sandwich to sleep with you?
Always. I do. When I'm on the road,
Yeah.
a sandwich and a milkshake. From when I was hungry, especially in little towns where you can't get something to eat.
Yeah.
I don't eat them, usually, but I have them there.
Just
as
in
a
case.
Security blanket.
Hey, Jack, you left out a couple little items there. Remember we used to give blood in New York, you said?
Yeah.
Remember you used to get a pair of shoes every year?
I
Free?
never got a pair of shoes.
You never got a pair
Never.
of shoes?
Tom McCann used to
Well,
get a
there
pair.
you go.
I never got a
Someone
pair.
left millions of dollars for
Shoes.
actors
Tom
so
McCann
they could
shoes.
get shoes.
They still have
You
it.
get- yeah.
Still exists.
Huh?
Still exists.
Yeah.
Still
What's
can get
that?
shoes.
The shoe fund still.
Tom McCann's and so for $3.95.
God,
They
that's
sell
it.
for about $40 a pair.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then you
I know what I have from these guys.
Who else has a burning question? Anybody else out there? Here's one right here. 1 and 2. Right over here, Bob.
Because I have a big mouth. Yes. So I can just...
Yeah, go ahead, shout it.
Can you tell me about 12 Angry Men, which happens to be one of my favorite films that you...
What do you want to know? It was the only labor of love movie. I don't like movies. That was the true labor of love. We rehearsed for 2 weeks. It only took 4 weeks to shoot it. Everybody, you know when you do... I co-starred with Lee. It's how impersonal this business is. I co-starred with Lee Remick in 2 movies. The Detective and Days of Wine and Roses. I never met her.
Oh,
I never met her. I don't know who she is. Never met her. That's how impersonal the business. In 12 Angry Men, every member of the cast was there every day. Every minute of every day for the other actor. It was an experience I've never. Sidney Lumet was his first movie. He had 250 setups. He had it worked out, and then after about a week's rehearsal, these are good actors, man, and they knew their craft. Everybody started playing a little bit, and Sidney would go, and then we'd go in for your close-up, and then wait for your close, and everybody knew they were going to get their close-ups, and everybody backed off and just played it, and it was just a wonderful experience. Best experience I ever had in film.
All right, we have time for two more questions. Go ahead.
When I used to watch Quincy, you guys used to do that bit all the time with the restaurant all the time, you know, the food and everything. How much did you really get to eat of that food?
I always ate. I hate people. They get a sandwich and they nibble.
Yeah.
You don't eat a sandwich, eat it. In the Odd Couple, I always ate on number 8.
Over here, we have somebody. Where is it? They're here. Okay, here we go.
Hi, being a bit of a muckraker myself, how would I get a hold of the newest Quincy thing if I might be able to find some funding for it?
You can't. They won't give it to you.
They won't give you the rights for Quincy?
I had people want to put up the money for it now. They won't give it to you.
They won't release
It's
the
over
rights?
Universal. And they paid the writer. We were so sure. It's funny. It's powerful. It's dramatic, more dramatic than any reunion, any script around. I mean, we worked on this day and night. We said, well, CBS is not going to let TNN do it. TNN was going to do it originally. They were going to go dramatic. But they see it, they're going to want to do it themselves. Nobody did it. But it's over at Universal. I don't know who's got it now.
No, I have an idea. Everybody always wondered what Quincy's first name was, so let's just go with the first name, drop the last name, and then maybe we can get the rights.
But nobody will know it's Quincy.
All right, we have time for maybe one more question. Who's good?
Yeah, I noticed that you did Death of a Salesman. I was wondering how you enjoyed that.
I enjoyed it very, very. I had a wonderful cast. I wish I could do it. I don't want to. But now, with what I learned in doing The Price, that freedom, I would like that do it again. I did a one-man show, Lyndon Johnson, and that was pretty good. But now I know what I could do with it. Now I have that freedom. But I enjoyed doing that very much. I saw Lee Cobb do it 5 times, but $1.80 to see it. Stood for $1.80 to see. I mean, I said that $1.80 to see All My Sons. And he was magnificent. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He was so brilliant in it. And I knew one day I would do it. And be as faithful as he was to it, and I tried. I've seen a lot of people do it. I saw Thomas Mitchell, I saw Gene Lockhart, I saw Albert Decker, I saw them all do it. And they never really, I thought, understood what it was. But I loved it. I had a wonderful cast. Good director, too.
Great. This has been such fun and just a great evening. Thank you so
My
much for coming
pleasure.
down and being with us tonight. Best of luck.